A lot of people are losing their minds about the recent play of James Harden. Is Harden washed, or will we look back at this soon and laugh? Let's see where this started. On September 30th, the NBA tweeted out the following. For the 2021-22 NBA season, there will be an interpretive change in the officiating of overt, abrupt, or abnormal non-basketball moves by offensive players with the ball in an effort to draw fouls. James Harden's own coach, Steve Nash, is on record stating that James Harden is the poster child for these new decisions.
Yeah, I think he's got to stick with it. I feel like he's unfairly become the poster boy of not calling these fouls. He's just got to stick with it. He's got to keep going to the basket. He's got to, do what he does.
That last part is very important and the focus of this video. Should James Harden just stick with it and continue to play his brand of basketball? Keep watching to find out. Through 5 games so far this season, Harden has attempted 15 free throws for an average of 3 attempts per game. He has attempted 23 or more free throws in a single game, a staggering 9 times, with a career average of 8.7 free throw attempts per game. To really draw a fair conclusion here, let's remove his OKC and Brooklyn numbers and zero in on his 10.4 free throw attempts per game in Houston. Harden has excellent efficiency from the line, making 86.2% of his free throw attempts in Houston, equaling 8.9 free throws made per game. That's a lot of points. Out of 237 players listed on Basketball Reference's points per game leaderboard for last season, 95 of them had scored fewer points per game all season than James Harden did off of free throw attempts alone in Houston. So yeah, getting to the line is kind of a big part of Harden's game, but will this new rule cause his downfall? Let's take a closer look. James Harden's averages while on the Rockets were 51.2% from 2-point range on 10.6 2-point attempts per game, and 36.2% from 3-point range on 9 attempts per game. So far this season, Harden is shooting 33.3% from 3 and an abysmal 38.5% from 2, with 7.8 3-point attempts per game and 7.8 2-point attempts per game. While he's down only 1.2 3-point attempts per game off his Houston numbers, he's losing out on another 2.8 2-point attempts per game for a total of 4 field goal attempts lost per game in Brooklyn, which makes sense because he hasn't been paired with a scorer as incredible as Kevin Durant since, well, Kevin Durant. It goes without saying that 2-point attempts made are worth 2 points, and 3-point attempts made are worth 3 points. So if James Harden is losing out on 2.8 2-point attempts per game, that's 5.6 points per game that he simply can't score. If he's losing out on 1.2 3-point attempts per game, well, that's another 3.6 points per game that he can't score. Add those together and we find that if James Harden scored at 100% efficiency, he'd be losing a staggering 9.2 points per game simply due to less usage. Obviously, he isn't scoring 100% of the time, but we do know what he averaged in Houston, using his 51.2% from 2-point range and 36.2% from 3-point range. Those 9.2 points per game of lost opportunity turn into an actual 4.2 points per game of lost scoring through no fault of his own. If we take these 4.2 points per game away from Harden's average during his tenure in Houston, he drops from averaging 29.6 points per game to 25.4 points per game. In addition to that, fewer shot attempts directly correlates to fewer fouls regardless of the rules. If you don't shoot, you can't get a shooting foul. Period. A neat little stat, free throw rate, measures how many free throw attempts a player will take per field goal attempt. This is simple math. Free throws attempted divided by field goals attempted. While in Houston, Harden averaged 19.6 field goal attempts per game and 10.4 free throw attempts per game, giving him a free throw rate of 53%, meaning that for every 2 field goals Harden attempted, he was also attempting slightly more than 1 free throw. If we applied that to him shooting 4 fewer field goal attempts this season, he would be missing out on 2.13 free throw attempts per game as well. And at an 85.8% career free throw percentage, Harden's losing another 1.83 points per game. So adding fewer trips to the line to the fewer field goal attempts, we can see that statistically, Harden's points per game adjusted for usage is down from 29.6 to 23.6. Keep in mind that this is based on the best years of his career only, and we still have more to unravel. As I mentioned earlier, Harden's shooting splits this season are well below his Houston averages. 2.9% lower on 3-point shots and an astounding 12.7% lower on 2-point shots. If we adjust his points per game output to match his average shooting while in Houston, he would be scoring 16.5 points per game this season, not including points scored from the line. To get that number, we circle back to free throw rate. Like I said, Harden's free throw rate in Houston was 53%, compared to a league average of 26.7%. He literally got to the line twice as much as league average for 8 years. James Harden's current free throw rate is 19.2%, whereas the league average this season is 22.1%. Even though Harden is without a doubt one of the craftiest players in the NBA and will undoubtedly find a new legal way of getting to the line more than everyone else, let's just raise his current free throw rate to league average. Taking 15.6 field goal attempts per game, this would give Harden an average of 3.5 free throw attempts per game, and with his Houston average of 86.2% from the line, that's an additional 3 points per game. Putting that all together, if James Harden was averaging his Houston shooting splits with his Brooklyn usage, he would be averaging 16.5 points per game off of field goal attempts and another 3 points per game off of free throw attempts for a total of 19.5 points per game. Remember, with no foul call rule change, just based on a decline in usage, Harden should be averaging 23.6 points per game. Again, while in Houston, he averaged 29.6, so he's losing out on 6 points per game based solely on usage. Add those 6 points per game to what he would be scoring this season if his shooting numbers were near his career averages, and we get a total of 25.5 points per game, which is pretty solid for a guy who just lost nearly 7 free throw attempts per game due to a rule change. As a matter of fact, if you put Harden's 19.5 points per game on his 15.6 field goal attempts per game up against the league leaders from last season, only 2 players who scored more than that would have done it on fewer field goal attempts per game. Domantas Sabonis, who scored 20.3 points per game on 14.6 field goal attempts per game, and Jimmy Butler, who scored 21.5 points per game on 14.2 field goal attempts per game. Now, Sabonis is a big that shoots 58% from 2-point on 12 attempts per game, and had 1.5 times the league average free throw rate, while Jimmy Butler had a higher free throw rate than Harden's Houston average, 56.3%, and he was hitting 86.3% of them. Guess what? Jimmy's still getting to the line 7 times per game this season. So ultimately, am I worried about James Harden? No. Is James Harden washed? Definitely not. Listen to your coach, shoot your shots, and I guarantee that by the end of the season, we're all looking back and laughing about all this drama. Let me know what you thought of this in the comments, and I'll see you next time.